Wes, mean friend, and welcome to yet another video. Sometimes it is fine to get to know some good news, isn't it? And this time, your dear old and trusty European law is the bearer of the good news, my dear friends. Although not for everybody, just for the selected few, just for the privileged people, definitely not for myself, as you will be able to observe. But the news in question today is the fact that The Lord of the Rings, The Return of the King, is going to go back to theaters for its 20th anniversary. And not only that, but it is going to be the extended version of the movie, that preferred version that everybody watches when they can watch The Lord of the Rings. Now, of course, if you've been following my channel for quite some time, you know that I'm not an overly huge fan of adaptations in general, that I always like to go to the source material, and given the chance, given the choice, I always grab the book. But if I have to admit that there are adaptations that are decent and good made in the history of movie making, well, The Lord of the Rings is obviously number one for me, along with, for example, The Godfather or The Last of the Mohicans, and so on and so forth. And I have always wanted to go back to cinema and rewatch The Lord of the Rings on the big screen, although, to be honest, we can enjoy these things in very similar conditions at homes today, having huge televisions or projectors and expensive sound systems. But there is always something to it, isn't it, going to cinema? There's this atmosphere of this shared experience, this shared passion with the other spectators. So, some people, selected people in the world, will be able to watch The Lord of the Rings, The Return of the King, the extended edition, on the big screen. Let us dive into the article by Collider.com, one of the shill websites, and they will prove themselves to be shills. Once again in this article, and I will point it out, and then I shall provide you with a further take of mine. So, The Lord of the Rings, The Return of the King, back in theaters for the 20th anniversary. The theatrical re-release will not only show the extended version of the movie, but will also include extra content. More than 2 decades from Peter Jackson's legendary trilogy hit the big screen, The Lord of the Rings remains in the news cycle. The evergreen fantasy film series is based on the works of J.R.R. Tolkien, which has entertained millions for 70 years now, and still engages fans in ways unforeseen by the author in his own time. I have stated, my dear friends, many times before that Professor Tolkien and his works have influenced both my personal and my academic life, and it's not only his works of fiction, like The Lord of the Rings or The Hobbit, but his translations, his essays on, for example, Old English or the translation of Beowulf. This has shaped me, and that is why I will always go and defend him on this channel. This channel is from a huge part devoted to defending great stories, great works of art from vile creatures from Amazon, Warner Brothers, or other huge filmmaking corporations. And really, the next paragraph has a lot to do with it. Recently, the talk of the town has been the surprising news that Warner Brothers and New Line were working on new feature films set within Middle-earth. Something of a risk given how perfect the original trilogy was, then marred slightly by the Hobbit series. So first, I have a video on my channel with a Tolkien expert providing his pitch for the new and upcoming The Lord of the Rings movies, which I think shouldn't exist at all, shouldn't be even thought of. The same way goes to The Rings of Power. And as far as The Hobbit marring the series, no. Did the sequel trilogy from Star Wars mar the original trilogy in your eyes? If it did, you are being influenced negatively, maybe too easily. Additionally, The Rings of Power, a series unrelated to the Jackson films and unrelated to Tolkien in general, unrelated to anything he ever wrote in his entire life. But I've got about 100 videos on my channel covering the abhorrent Rings of Power, and said prior to the events of the novels, and yeah, I would rephrase this sentence and say, and set nowhere near the events of the novels, has been something of a success for Amazon, and that's the shilling part, because it has not been a success at all. but still compared unfavorably to the feature films. Thankfully, for fans yearning to head back to that big screen Middle-earth experience and see the wonders of New Zealand firsthand once more, the 20th anniversary of The Return of the King is being released in cinemas to mark the occasion. The finale of the trilogy notably became a joint record holder at the Academy Awards by taking home 11 Oscar statuettes, tied with Ben-Hur and Titanic. The re-release will feature the extended version of the movie. The film will return to cinemas on April the 13th as part of a special release to celebrate 2 decades since its sensational release, which caps off not just a cinematic miracle, but perhaps Peter Jackson's own personal magnum opus. And what's more, it's going to be the extended edition of the film, the 260-minute epic version of the film, which was originally released on DVD a year after the movie's cinematic release, will be shown in all its glory. Of all the films in the series, Return of the King benefits most from the restored footage, adding significant weight to the story, particularly for Viggo Mortensen's Aragorn and the Black Gates of Mordor. The film will be playing at Regal and Cinemark theatres. More have yet to be confirmed, and Cinemark visitors will also be treated to some extra content, such as an introduction from Elijah Wood, who played the lead role of Hobbit Frodo Baggins in both the Lord of the Rings and Hobbit trilogies, as well as a behind-the-scenes look of the new Lord of the Rings role-playing tabletop game at the LA Comic-Con. Now, this is really the bad news for most people in the world. It's going to be in selected cinemas. I don't think they are going to be showing it here in my town, in my city, in the middle of Europe, in the Czech Republic, which is a pity. But yeah, then again, I prefer to go and read the book anyway. Fans should keep a watchful eye on the Regal and the Cinemark websites, where ticket sales are expected to begin imminently for the April the 13th showings. You can see the original trailer for The Return of the King down below, which you can watch for yourselves. Alright then, I shall provide a link to this article in the description down below, but I have read it in its entirety, so I don't think there is any need to be rereading it. So once again, just to reiterate what I've already said, well, obviously, if you have the chance, go to cinema and watch The Return of the King on the big screen. Now, it is undoubtedly one of the greatest cinematic experiences in the history of movie making. Whatever you think about that particular adaptation, if you like it or not, that movie is very well made. It is an excellently made film. And it is one of the very few films that are able to make me cry like a little baby when Aragorn in Minas Tirith at the end of the movie says, "My friends, you bow to no one." Oh gee, alright then. Well, let me know in the comments down below what you think, if you're going to go to cinema to see The Lord of the Rings, The Return of the King or not. And that will be all. Thank you very much for watching, and Namarie.